The Helios crown was a monument to optimism, which was precisely why Commander Evan Locke despised it. It hung in the void like a platinum halo, a perfect, gleaming ring orbiting the serene, terrible beauty of the white dwarf Helios. It was the Celestial Concord's gateway, its grand ballroom, and its most opulent diplomatic weapon. And for the next 3 weeks, it was the host of the Royal Gala, a security nightmare designed to celebrate the signing of a peace treaty with the Varathi Dominion. "Peace with the Varathi," Evan snorted, the sound lost in the low hum of the Tactical Operations Center. That was like signing a peace treaty with a gravity shear. The Concord loved its pageantry. It was a union of dozens of species, governed from the luminous heart of the Lumerian Empire. The Lumerians, with their glowing eyes and the intricate shifting patterns of light that bloomed under their skin, preached harmony and understanding. They had welcomed humanity into their grand alliance barely a century ago, and they still treated humans like volatile, loud children who were, nonetheless, surprisingly good at cleaning up messes. Violent messes, mostly. Humans were seen as impolite, emotionally unstable, and brutish. But they formed the stubborn, unglamorous spine of the Concord's military frontier. Evan Locke was one of those brutes, though he hid it well. As the technical security chief for the entire Helios crown, his job was to ensure the station's myriad systems from life support to the artificial gravity plates functioned flawlessly. Especially now. He stared at the main schematic, a holographic representation of the crown that filled the center of the dark room. Dots of light guests, dignitaries, engineers crawled through it. His focus, however, was on the spaces between the dots. "You're doing it again, Commander," Lieutenant Rila, his second-in-command, said from her console. She did not look up, staring at the empty space like it personally insulted you. "It's about to," Evan murmured. "This gala is a target painted in galactic-scale neon. We're inviting the entire Varathi leadership onto a station powered by a caged star, all in the name of a photo opportunity." "It's diplomacy, sir." "It's a parade," Evan countered, his voice flat. "And I hate parades." Rila knew why. Everyone in his unit knew why. The name Frontier 9 hung in the air, unsaid. A forgotten gas mining outpost. A surprise Varathi raid. A tactical realignment by Concord High Command that had left Evan's unit cut off, abandoned, and eventually annihilated. All except him. He had survived. Not through brilliance, but through sheer animalistic stubbornness, hiding in the guts of a failing reactor for 3 days, listening to the static of his unit's comms fade one by one. That was 5 years ago. The nightmares had faded to a dull throb, a constant pressure behind his eyes. He buried the trauma under layers of quiet cynicism and a meticulous obsession with his job. He was, in his own estimation, a strictly mid-level officer. He was good with systems. He kept his head down, and he avoided politics like a plasma fire. His only quirk, if one could call it that, was his intuition. His team called it hearing the universe grumble. Evan just felt it as a dissonant itch in his brain, a sense that the intricate mathematics of the station's systems were about to hit a sour note. Right now, the universe was not just grumbling, it was preparing to scream. "Priority alert from High Command," Rila announced, her tone sharpening. "Encrypted, eyes only for you." Evan sighed, swiping the message onto his personal datapad. He read it again, and then pinched the bridge of his nose. "You have got to be kidding me." "Sir, we have a guest, early arrival, minor Lumerian diplomat, codename Lady Nira. She's to be kept off all public manifests. Top secret, minimal footprint." "Okay," Rila said slowly. "So we assign a standard diplomatic protection detail." "That's the problem. They've assigned me." Rila actually turned in her chair. "You, sir. You're the chief of the entire station's technical grid. You don't do personal escort duty. Not even for the Empress herself. Apparently, today I do, Evan said, already grabbing his sidearm and jacket. Command wants a low-profile, high-capability escort to bring her from the private docking bay on Deck 7 to the Lumerian delegation's secured wing. It's political favoritism. Rila. Some highborn people want the red carpet without the press. Make sure the grid stays stable. I'll be back in an hour. And if the universe grumbles, she asked. Tell it I'm busy babysitting, he said, the door hissing shut behind him. The private docking bay on Deck 7 was sterile, silent, and bathed in the soft, lavender light favored by the Lumerians. A single ship, a sleek, obsidian dart without markings, rested in its berth. The ramp was down. 2 figures stood at the bottom. One was a towering Lumerian royal guard, his armor the color of mother of pearl, his face obscured by a reflective visor. The other was the diplomat. Lady Nyra. She was shorter than the guard, slender, and wrapped in a deep indigo traveling cloak. The hood pulled low. She was, as advertised, Lumerian, but the normal, gentle glow of her people was muted. He could barely see the faint, ethereal light of her eyes beneath the shadow of the hood, and no light pattern stirred on the sliver of visible skin on her hands. She seemed contained. "Commander Locke," the royal guard boomed. His voice was a perfect, resonant translation. "You are the designated escort." "That's me," Evan said, stopping a respectful 5 paces away. He gave a short, human-style military nod. "Ma'am, if you follow me, I'll take you to your quarters. The route is secured." Lady Nyra said nothing for a moment. She simply tilted her head, a gesture that felt less like an acknowledgement and more like an assessment. When she finally spoke, her voice was a crisp, clear contralto, unaccented, but with a musical cadence that marked her as highborn. "Your station is loud, Commander," Evan blinked. "Ma'am, this is the quietest deck we have." "Not to the ear," she said, stepping forward. The guard remained by the ship. "To the senses. The energy relays are unbalanced. The gravimetric plating is humming at a frequency 0.03% above optimal." Evan stopped. He stared at her. He had spent the entire morning arguing with engineering that the plating on the outer ring was vibrating, a claim they had dismissed as within tolerance. "You have sharp senses, ma'am," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "I am trained to observe," she replied, gliding past him. "Please, lead the way. I am eager to be secured." Evan's annoyance spiked. Trained to observe. A polite, diplomatic way of saying she was important, and he was the help. He turned and led the way into the main transit corridor. "We'll take the central lift," he said, keeping his voice professional. "It's the fastest route." "It is also the most predictable," she said from behind him. "Is it not the primary vector for ambush?" "It's also a reinforced tube with its own energy shielding, ma'am," Evan said, his patience thinning. "It's secure. My teams have swept it." "The teams you command. Very reassuring," she mused. Evan stopped at the lift, holding his hand over the scanner. He was about to make a sharp retort about political appointees when his brain itched. The air pressure in the corridor felt wrong. The hum from the walls, the one she had pointed out, suddenly spiked, not in volume, but in urgency. "Change of plans," he snapped. "I beg your pardon. This way. Now." He did not wait for her to agree. He grabbed her arm, a severe breach of protocol, and pulled her away from the lift, shoving her toward a service junction 20 paces down the hall. "Commander, unhand me," she protested, her voice dangerously sharp. He did not have time to apologize. The universe, which had been grumbling, finally roared. The world dissolved in fire and noise. A shaped charge detonated precisely where the lift doors had been, blowing them inward in a spray of molten metal. The shockwave hit them, hot and concussive, slamming Evan and the diplomat against the bulkhead. Alarms screamed to life, crimson light strobing, drowning out the lavender. "Down!" Evan yelled, shoving her into the alcove of the service junction as three figures emerged from the smoke. They were wearing station engineering uniforms, but they moved like soldiers. They held pulse rifles, non-regulation, and were already firing suppression bursts toward the docking bay, pinning down the Royal Guard. A fourth figure, clearly the leader, pointed directly at their alcove. "The asset, get the asset." Evan drew his sidearm, a standard-issue kinetic pistol. He was a tech officer, not infantry. But Frontier 9 had taught everyone how to shoot. He snapped off 2 shots, forcing them to take cover. "The secure room is 40 meters down that maintenance corridor," he yelled over the din, pointing to a hatch. "Go. I am not leaving you." "That wasn't a request, Lady Go." He leaned out to fire again, but the leader was smart. He fired at the ceiling, not at Evan, but at the gravity control panel above him. The panel exploded in a shower of sparks, and the floor beneath Evan's feet ceased to exist. Or rather, the artificial gravity plating in his specific 5-meter square abruptly reversed, slamming him against the ceiling with bone-jarring force. His pistol flew from his numb fingers. Stars exploded behind his eyes. He heard the diplomat cry out. Through a haze of pain, he saw the 3 attackers advancing, their heavy boots magnetized to the stable plating. They were ignoring him, moving directly for her. No, not again. Not another one on my watch. He was pinned, helpless, a bug on a board. But he was technical security. He knew the systems. And his attackers had just reminded him what his best weapon was. He fumbled for the Omni tool on his wrist, his arms screaming in protest against the inverted gravity. He could not access the main grid, not with the local panel fried, but he could access the one next to it. The attackers were 10 meters from her. He slammed his thumb onto the tool's interface, forcing a raw, unauthorized command into the adjacent grid square. He did not try to turn it off. He did not try to reverse it. He simply told the system to triple its output. Instantly. Now. The 2 lead attackers stepped from the stable plating onto the targeted square. For them, gravity did not just return, it multiplied. They went from 1G to 3Gs in a nanosecond. The sudden, crushing weight buckled their knees. They collapsed like puppets with their strings cut, their armor groaning as they were pinned flat to the deck, unable to move, unable to even lift their heads. The leader, still on stable ground, stared in disbelief. Evan, still pinned to the ceiling, grinned through the blood in his mouth. "My station. My rules." He did not have time to savor it. The leader, realizing his team was down, turned his rifle on the diplomat. "Evan," she screamed. He registered, dimly, that she had used his first name. He could not get to his gun. He could not get down. But he could still type. He targeted his own grid square, the one pinning him to the ceiling, and he turned it off. He fell. It was a 3-meter drop, and he hit the deck hard, the impact rattling his teeth. But he had aimed for his fall. He crashed directly into the leader's back, a messy, desperate tackle that sent them both sprawling. The rifle skittered away. The leader was strong, his alien physiology hidden beneath the human uniform. He rolled, bringing a vibro knife up, slashing at Evan's throat. Evan caught his wrist, the blade humming inches from his face. He was outmatched in strength, his body aching from 2 high-G impacts. A heavy metal fire extinguisher suddenly slammed into the side of the attacker's head. The man's eyes rolled back, and he went limp. Evan lay panting, staring up at Lady Nyra. She held the extinguisher, her stance perfectly balanced, her knuckles white. Her hood had fallen back. She was Lumerian, all right. Her skin was the color of pale moonlight, and across her cheeks and forehead, delicate patterns of light soft. Silver constellations were beginning to glow with agitated energy. Her eyes were not just luminous. They were two burning pools of violet fire, currently fixed on him with an expression of profound annoyance. "You," she panted, "are the least professional officer I have ever encountered." Evan just groaned and rolled onto his back. "You're welcome, ma'am." The alarms were still screaming. Footsteps, heavy ones, were approaching from the docking bay. The Royal Guard. "We can't stay here." Evan forced himself to his feet, ignoring the screaming from his ribs. "That lift is compromised, and they knew our route. We have to assume the main corridors are a death trap. We're going underground." "Underground?" she asked, her regal brow furrowing. "This is a space station." "The maintenance ducts. The guts of the station," Evan said. He limped to the service junction the attackers had ignored and wrenched the hatch open, revealing a dark, greasy shaft. "It's not clean, and it's not dignified, but it's safe. After you, ma'am." She looked from the dark, narrow shaft to him, her expression priceless. It was a perfect blend of aristocratic disgust and pragmatic acceptance. "If I ruin this cloak," she stated, "you will be personally commissioning a new one." "Understood. Now move." He half pushed her into the opening and scrambled in after, sealing the hatch just as the Royal Guard rounded the corner. The next hour was a new kind of hell. The ducts were tight, dark, and smelled of ozone and recycled lubricant. They were designed for repair drones and maintenance crews, not commanders, and certainly not for minor diplomats. Evan led the way, his Omni tool providing a dim light. He moved with pain but practiced speed. This was his territory. "I trust," she said, her voice tight as she braced herself against a conduit pipe, "that this is not your standard diplomatic protocol." "My standard protocol," Evan grunted, pulling himself up to the next level, "is sitting in a dark room. My diplomatic protocol is don't get shot. So far, we're failing." "Your tactical response was creative," she allowed, climbing up after him. She moved with surprising grace, her cloak snagging on every bolt. "The gravity plating. That is not a standard maneuver." "They taught it at Frontier," Evan stopped. He did not talk about Frontier 9. "It's an old trick. Disrupts enemy formations. You just have to be willing to break the hardware. Engineering is going to have my hide for this." "You seem more concerned about engineering than the assassins." "The assassins are neutralized. The paperwork is forever." They crawled in silence for another 10 minutes. The only sounds were their breathing and the distant, metallic groans of the station. "Why you?" she asked suddenly. "What? Why were you assigned to me, a commander of technical security? It is an inefficient use of a high-value asset. You are not a bodyguard." "I've been asking myself the same question, ma'am," Evan said, checking a junction. "I assumed you pulled strings, asked for the boss. A little political vanity." She actually laughed. The sound was like small, clear bells, and it was so unexpected in the greasy darkness that Evan almost slipped. "Political vanity," she repeated, a smile in her voice. "You truly are a human, Commander. You see a shadow and assume a conspiracy of ego." "I see a high-risk escort for a minor diplomat who can apparently spot a 0.03% frequency misalignment by ear. My ego has nothing to do with it. My grumble detector does. And it's been screaming ever since I got your file." He turned to face her in the narrow space, his light shining on her face. The violet glow in her eyes was brighter now, curious. "You have no idea who I am, do you?" she asked. It was not a question. "You're Lady Nira, a Lumerian diplomat. And right now," he said, tapping a panel that hissed open, "you're my problem." He motioned her through the panel into a small, dark relay station. It was quiet, secure. The alarms were distant. "We're safe here," Evan said, leaning against the wall and sliding to the floor, his legs finally giving out. He ran a diagnostic on his Omni tool. The station's in partial lockdown, but the internal security net is holding. The Royal Guard has secured the docking bay. The attackers are in custody. I can call for an escort. "That will not be necessary, Commander." Her voice had changed. The witty, annoyed travel companion was gone. In her place was someone else. The voice was still hers, but it was filled with an ancient, resonant authority that chilled the air. Evan looked up. She stood in the center of the small room, and she was no longer hiding. She pulled the hood of her cloak back, and the indigo fabric fell away. Light bloomed. The intricate silver patterns he had glimpsed on her face were now visible, flowing across her high cheekbones, down her neck, and disappearing beneath a simple, silver tunic. They were not tattoos. They were living light, swirling and pulsing with a soft, internal power. Her eyes were no longer violet. They were galaxies, deep and luminous, radiating an intelligence that felt vast and old. She was beautiful, but it was the beauty of a supernova, of a perfectly balanced equation. Evan's blood ran cold. He had seen that face before. Every human, every citizen of Concord, he had seen it on holographic banners, on galactic broadcasts, on the official seals of treaties. He scrambled to his feet, his injuries, his exhaustion, his cynicism all evaporating in a cold shock of pure, unadulterated horror. He snapped to the nearest thing he could manage to a position of attention. The woman he had dragged through a ventilation shaft. The woman he had accused of political vanity. The woman he had told to shut up and crawl was Empress Astria Nyx, ruler of the Celestial Concord. She regarded him, her head tilted, the same assessing gesture she had used in the docking bay. The light from her skin cast soft, shifting shadows across the relay station. She took a step closer, and Evan instinctively pressed himself flatter against the bulkhead. "I must apologize for the deception. Commander Locke," she said, her imperial voice echoing slightly in the small space. "It was necessary to assess the station's security firsthand before the gala. My Lady Nira persona allows me access." Your Radiance," Evan stammered, his mind blank. He had no protocol for this. There was no protocol for this. "You have destroyed a primary lift. You have violated 3 separate articles of Lumerian diplomatic protocol regarding personal contact. You have commandeered a fire extinguisher. And," she added, a ghost of that smile returning, "you have permanently stained my cloak." Evan could only stare, waiting for the axe to fall. Banishment execution. Being reassigned to sanitation on a plague ship, Empress Astria Nyx looked at the grease on her hands, then at the terrified, defiant, and utterly exhausted human commander leaning against her wall. The light in her eyes softened. Just a fraction. "Interesting, Commander," she said. "Very interesting, indeed." The infirmary smelled of antiseptic and burnt wiring. Evan Locke sat on the edge of a diagnostic bed, hissing as a medical drone sealed a gash on his forearm. His ribs were a tapestry of purple bruises, and his head felt like it was still bouncing between the floor and the ceiling. "You are, by all metrics, lucky, Commander," the attending physician, a tall, 6-limbed Xylosian, chirped. "The internal trauma from the gravity, shear alone, should have put you in stasis for a week. Human physiology is stubbornly redundant. We call it being hard to kill." "Doctor," Evan said, testing his weight on his feet. He was already pulling his uniform jacket back on over the medical undershirt. "I call it a statistical anomaly. High Command, however, calls it an immediate debriefing. You are summoned, Commander. Conference Room Alpha." Evan sighed. The paperwork had arrived, And it had teeth. Right. Lucky me. Conference Room Alpha was cold, both in temperature and atmosphere. The grand holographic seal of the celestial Concord, a swirling galaxy held in a Lumerian hand, dominated the far wall. Seated at the long obsidian table were the station's senior staff. His own second-in-command Rila, looking pale and worried, and two of the Empress's royal guards, standing like statues. But it was the figure at the head of the table who commanded the room. He was Varathi. That alone was a statement. The Varathi were a species of predators, tall and lean, with skin like polished obsidian and eyes that held a reptilian, unblinking stillness. They were the bogeyman of the Concord, the reason for the frontier fleets. And this one was the new High Prefect of Concord Security, the supreme commander of the very organization Evan worked for. His name was Draith. He had been reappointed as a gesture of goodwill, a symbol of the new peace. To Evan, he looked like a wolf tasked with guarding the sheep. Draith wore the immaculate white and gold uniform of the High Prefect, which only made his jet-black skin and stark, angular features more menacing. He regarded Evan with a look of bored, reptilian assessment. "Commander Locke," Draith's voice was a deep, smooth baritone, unsettlingly calm. "Thank you for joining us. Please, be seated. Your exertions have been the talk of the station." Evan took the only empty chair, at the far end of the table. He felt like he was on trial. "A formal investigation is, of course, underway," Draith began, steepling his long, black fingers. "We have the 3 assailants in custody. Their neuroscans are clean." A murmur went around the table. "Clean," Rila spoke up. "Prefect, that's impossible. They were professionals. Indeed, wiped clean. A Class 4 memory purge. They do not know who they are, let alone who hired them. A dead end," Draith said, his gaze sliding to Evan. "Which leaves us with the event itself." A hologram flickered to life above the table. It was the security feed from the docking bay corridor. Evan watched himself greet Lady Naira. He watched himself grab her. He watched the explosion. Then, the feed dissolved into static. The sensor logs for this corridor, and indeed the entire Deck 7 primary, went dark exactly 90 seconds before the explosion, Draith said smoothly. They remain dark for the duration of the incident. The only data we have is from this external camera, which was, conveniently, just outside the blackout zone. The hologram shifted. It now showed a schematic of the gravity plating controls. "The attack was brutal, but clumsy," Draith continued. "The true tactical brilliance came from you, Commander, reversing gravity on yourself, tripling it on your enemies. A maneuver that is not in any Concord tactical manual. A maneuver that requires direct, manual access to the grid's core command." Evan felt the trap closing. "Prefect, I was pinned. I used my Omni tool to access the local panel." "The local panel was destroyed in the blast," Draith interrupted, his voice still perfectly calm. "My technicians confirm it. To perform such an override, you would have needed to access the subsystem mainframe, an access level that is restricted. Furthermore, to do so would require bypassing the very sensor nets that were, at that moment, offline." He paused, letting the implication hang in the cold air. "A remarkable coincidence, Commander. The station's chief of technical security, the one man who knows the grid's back doors better than anyone, happens to be on site when the grid is mysteriously blinded, allowing him to perform a 1-in-a-million tactical maneuver to save a diplomat. A diplomat who, it turns out, was the Empress herself." Evan stared at him. "What are you implying, Prefect?" "I am implying nothing," Draith said, leaning forward. The light caught his unblinking, sapphire dark eyes. "I am stating facts. The system was compromised from within. You were the only one present with the knowledge to do it. You are a human, Commander. Your species is known for its dramatic, emotional, and often violent solutions. I saved her life, Evan snapped, his voice echoing in the sudden silence. You did, Dreeth agreed. And in doing so, you revealed a catastrophic security flaw. Your own. As of this moment, Commander Locke, you are formally suspended from all high-level command access. Your security clearances are revoked. Pending the outcome of this investigation, you will surrender your Omni-tool and sidearm to the guards. Evan felt the blood drain from his face. This was not an investigation. It was a crucifixion. He looked at Rila, who was white-knuckled, staring at the table. He looked at the other officers, their faces carefully neutral. He was alone. This is protocol, Draith finished, with a slight, almost imperceptible smile. For the security of the gala, we cannot have variables. You are dismissed. Evan stood. He unclipped his Omni-tool. He unholstered his pistol. He placed them on the table with a quiet, deliberate click. He turned and walked out of the room, the weight of a dozen gazes on his back. He had been walking the station's public concourse for an hour, aimless, burning with a cold, familiar rage. The rage of Frontier 9. The rage of being the scapegoat, the expendable human grunt. The station pulsed around him, thousands of beings preparing for a party, oblivious to the knife that had just been pressed to its throat. His personal communicator, a simple, non-network device, chimed. It was a text-only summons, an anonymous code for a private observation lounge in the Lumerian wing. He went. The lounge was dark, the outer wall a single pane of armored transparency, looking out at the blazing white dwarf. Helios. Empress Astria Nyx stood before it, not as a ruler, but as a silhouette against the terrible light. She was in her formal robes now, the living light of her skin pulsing gently. Your radiance, Evan said, his voice flat. He did not bow. He was too tired, too angry. You are angry, Commander, she said, not turning. I am suspended. Your radiance, by a Varathi. On suspicion of treason, angry doesn't begin to cover it. High Prefect Draith is within his rights, she said, her voice cool, distant. The sensor blackout is a fact. Your access is a fact. The optics are, as your people say, bad. Evan felt a bitter laugh rise in his throat. Optics. So that's it. After I dragged you through the guts of this place, it's politics. You're letting him do this. I am, she said. She turned, and the light from Helios caught her face. Her expression was not cold. It was hard, like diamond. I am letting him suspend Commander Locke, the public head of station security. I am letting him believe he has contained the problem. I am letting him underestimate the volatile human who ruined his plan. Evan blinked. His plan. Those were not rogue assassins, Commander. They were Varathi Dominion Special Forces, masked by biodampeners. Their goal was not to kill me. It was to abduct me, quietly. Your dramatic intervention made that impossible. She walked toward him. Draith is the enemy. He is here to sabotage this treaty, and I suspect, to do far more. But he is High Prefect. I cannot move against him without proof, and he has just expertly framed my best witness as the primary suspect. So I'm sidelined, Evan said. A pawn, sacrificed. No, Astria said, stopping just a pace from him. You are being repositioned. You are suspended from public command. You are hereby demoted to maintenance crew. Sector Gamma, effective immediately. Maintenance. Evan stared at her, an insane, hysterical laugh building in his chest. You're making me a janitor. I am making you a ghost, she corrected him, her luminous eyes intense. Draith will be watching Commander Locke. He will not be watching maintenance technician lock, shift lead for thermal coupling and waste reclamation. He has taken your access to the command grid. He has not taken your access to the ducts, the conduits, the physical guts of the station, the places you know better than he does, the places the assassins used. She held out a simple, battered-looking Omni tool, a maintenance-grade model. You are no longer my defender, Commander. You are my investigator. Go find what they missed. Find me the proof I need to hang him. A spark of something he had not felt since before Frontier 9. A raw, dangerous purpose ignited in his chest. This was not a betrayal. This was a leash, let slip. It's still a bad plan, he said, taking the tool. I'm one man. You are not, she said. Your new supervisor is expecting you. She is brilliant, and she does not trust Wraith any more than we do. Sector Gamma's primary lab was not in the pristine spire, but deep in the ring's superstructure. It was a chaotic, cavernous space that smelled of ozone, solder, and something faintly floral. The centerpiece of the lab was a massive, swirling holographic display, not of the station, but of the structure outside it, the halo ring. It was an impossible object, a vast, ancient ring of interlocking, shifting components that dwarfed the Helios crown. It was part machine, part artifact, a relic left by a species the Concord politely called the Precursors. It was the station's ultimate defense, and a complete mystery. You must be Locke. The voice came from a woman, half buried in a diagnostic console. She emerged, wiping grease from her hands onto a lab coat. She was slender, with sharp, intelligent features, dark hair pulled back in a messy knot, and eyes that were a startling mix of human blue and Lumerian luminous violet. Her skin had the barest, faintest trace of light patterns, like a watercolor echo. Dr. Kira Solon, she said, offering a hand. Her grip was firm. I'm your new boss. Welcome to the boiler room. I hear you're good at breaking things. Only when necessary, Evan said, looking around. The Empress said you were in charge of this section. I'm in charge of this, Kira said, gesturing to the holographic ring. The big, scary, silent god machine floating outside our windows. The Helios crown is just a fancy observation post built in its shadow. My official title is Head of Precursor Artifact Studies. Unofficially, I'm the station's ring whisperer. The Empress said you had a theory about the attack. I do, Kira said, her expression turning serious. She tapped her console, bringing up the sensor logs from the attack, or, rather, the blank spaces where they should have been. The attack on Deck 7, the explosion, the gravity shear, it was all very noisy. It felt noisy, Evan agreed, rubbing his ribs. Exactly. And while everyone was watching the noisy, I was watching the ring. And for 3.14 seconds, it reacted. She isolated a strand of data, a complex energy wave. This is a resonance spike from the halo. It saw the plasma charge. It saw the gravity distortion. It didn't just see it. It probed it. The attack wasn't aimed at the Empress. Locke. She was just the bait. The attack was aimed at this. They were poking the bear. They wanted to see if it would bite back. And it did. Why? That's the billion-credit question. The Halo Ring is the most powerful weapon ever discovered. It can bend gravity, fold space, and probably turn a star inside out. For a century, it's been dormant, but it's waking up. And someone with prefect-level access and Varathi military hardware wants to know exactly what it can do and how to control it. Evan looked at the swirling image of the ring. So, where do we start? Kira smiled. We start where you left off, in the ducts. The assassins may have been memory wiped, but they were sloppy. They left a trail, a faint quantum echo from their shielded tech. I can track it. But I need someone who can navigate the physical space. Someone who hears the grumbles. For the next 3 days, Evan was a ghost. He and Kira moved through the station's hidden layers. A strange pair, the disgraced commander and the half-breed scientist. They traced the assassin's path, a route that bypassed every major security checkpoint. It was in these dark, forgotten spaces that Evan's intuition began to sharpen. "Hold up," he said, stopping in a narrow conduit junction. He put his hand on a thick, buzzing power relay. "What is it?" Kira whispered, her sensor tricorder active. "I'm reading standard energy flow." "It's angry," Evan said, frowning. He could not explain it. The hum was wrong. It felt like a clenched fist. "The load is unbalanced. It's going to shunt. We go around." "A round that will add 2 hours. Lock, the data says." "The data is wrong. Or late," Evan insisted. "We go around." Kira studied him, her half-Lumerian eyes glowing softly in the dark. "Okay, Commander, you're the guide." 2 hours later, Rila pinged his covert comm. A catastrophic power relay in Conduit 12 Alpha, the exact one he had touched, had overloaded, frying an entire sector's power grid. Kira just stared at him. "How did you know?" "I heard it grumble," he muttered. But he felt a cold spike of confusion. It had been more than a grumble. He had felt the energy surging, like a pre-echo of the event. While Evan and Kira hunted shadows, Draith moved in the light. He had convened a full session of the station's Security Council, which now included several high-ranking human admirals, rushed in for the gala. "The human element, gentlemen." Draith's voice was smooth, reasonable, as he addressed the grim-faced officers. "Commander Locke's failure is a symptom of a larger problem. Your people are a young race, admirable, but so volatile. You act when you should think. You strike when you should observe." Admiral Petrov, a human hawk, bristled. "My people have held the line against your own for 50 years. Prefect, do not lecture us on tactics." "I am not," Draith said, a placating hand raised. "I am merely pointing out a vulnerability. This station, this gala, this ring, they are too important to be left to impulse. The attempted abduction of the Empress by human-presenting operatives. The failure of the human security chief. The optics are, as they say, bad." He had them. He was using Evan's own words, his own failure, against his entire species. "I propose a temporary solution," Draith said. "For the duration of the gala, a joint command. My Varathi security specialist will integrate with the station's tactical grid. A Varathi security oversight. We will provide stability, a steady hand, especially over the Halo Ring's defensive systems, to ensure no unfortunate impulses occur." The human admirals looked at each other. To refuse was to imply they could not control their own. To accept was a humiliation. "It is a sound, temporary measure," Petrov finally conceded, his voice tasting of ash. "For the good of the treaty." Draith gave his small, cold smile. The first lock had clicked open. Evan was summoned by the Empress again. This time, he was grimy, his maintenance uniform stained with lubricant, and he smelled like ozone. He was led into her private study, an oasis of calm and flowing light. Astria sat, not on a throne, but at a simple desk, reviewing reports. "You look like hell, Commander," she observed, not looking up. "It's a dirty job, your radiance," he said, remaining at attention. "My report is on the Omni tool I was given." "I have read it," she said. "A military-grade quantum echo, Varathi Dominion signature, leading to a shielded maintenance node on Deck 14. This is what I needed. But it is not enough. It proves they were here. It does not tie them to Draith." "Then let me get closer," Evan said, stepping forward. Restore my access. I can get into his private logs. Absolutely not, she snapped, finally looking up. Her eyes were sharp. He expects that. He is waiting for you to do something rash, something human. Evan felt the insult like a slap. And what would a Lumerian do? Meditate until he confesses, a Lumerian, she said, rising. Would observe. I would like to learn. Would not mistake a single battle for the entire war. You are obsessed with Draith. You are obsessed with Frontier 9. You see all institutions, all authority, as a betrayal waiting to happen. And you don't, he shot back, his anger rising. You sit here, surrounded by protocol, while a wolf guards your door. You sacrifice me for optics. You're moving me around like a piece on a board. How is that different from what happened at Frontier? The silence in the room was absolute. The light from her skin seemed to dim. Because, she said, her voice dangerously quiet. That is the first honest thing you have said to me. The first thing that was not a cynical quip or a technical report. You are a good officer, Evan. But you are a terrible politician. You see the knife in the hand. I must see the hand that guides the knife, and the mind that guides the hand. She walked toward him, her gaze unwavering. You are right. I am using you. Just as I am using Draith. Just as I am using this entire gala. This is a game, Commander, and you are my most unpredictable piece. Do not disappoint me by becoming a predictable one. He stared at her, the anger draining, replaced by a grudging, complex respect. She was not hiding. She was fighting, just with different weapons. Your security debriefs are a waste of my time, he said gruffly. Are they? A small smile touched her lips. Then your next one will be tomorrow. You will report on the stability of the gravity plating in the grand ballroom. I would hate for my guests to float away. Yes, your radiance, he said, the corner of his own mouth twitching. I'll make sure they stay grounded. He left, but the tension of their exchange lingered, a strange, electric charge that was not entirely unpleasant. His last meeting of the day was one he could not avoid. A summons from High Prefect Draith himself. A standard psychological evaluation for a suspended officer. Draith's office was the opposite of the Empress's study. It was dark, cold, and minimalist. The only decoration was a large, obsidian sculpture of a Varathi predator bird. Commander Locke, please, come in, Draith said, gesturing to a simple, hard chair. He did not rise. This is just a formality, a box to be ticked. Evan sat. He said nothing. I have been reviewing your file, Draith said, his voice casual. It is truly fascinating. Most of a security chief's file is mind-numbing. Yours reads like an adventure novel, especially Frontier 9. Evan's hands clenched. It was 5 years ago. Was it? The trauma seems quite fresh, Draith mused. But what interests me is not the massacre. It is what came before. Your record on Earth. You were part of the Aegis Initiative, correct? A tactical enhancement program. It was an advanced tactical training simulation, Evan said, his voice clipped. Was it? Draith leaned forward, his reptilian eyes seeming to peel back Evan's skin. My intelligence suggests it was more that they were trying to awaken something in their brightest soldiers. A battle sense, they called it. A primitive, human version of what you heard in the ducks today. Evan went cold. I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, I think you do. Tell me, Commander. Draith's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. What do you remember about the final 48 hours on Frontier 9 before the attack? Evan opened his mouth. He tried to summon the memory. He remembered the orders to hold. He remembered the first explosion. He remembered the screams on the comms, but the 2 days before it was just static. A gray wall, A migraine-like pressure. It was a patrol, Evan lied, his voice faltering. Draith smiled. It was a terrible, knowing expression. You survived for 3 days in a failing reactor, Commander. A reactor that was leaking hard radiation. My medical analysts tell me a normal human would have been dead in 12 hours. Your unit's logs show you were the last one transmitting. You are many things, Commander. You are brave. You are stubborn. You are a volatile human. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the halo ring. But I am beginning to doubt, he said, his back to Evan. That normal is one of them. Evan left the office, his footsteps echoing in the corridor. Draith's words followed him, burrowing into his mind. He had come here to unmask a conspiracy. He was just now realizing that he himself might be the deepest mystery of all. Dr. Kira Solin's lab was a sanctuary of organized chaos, and for the past 12 hours, she had been a high priestess presiding over a digital exorcism. Draith's words had unsettled Evan, but they had galvanized Kira. She had pulled Evan's complete, unredacted medical file from the Frontier 9 incident. A file so classified, she'd had to bounce the request off 3 separate archival servers, using the Empress's own override authority. She was not looking at the superficial wounds. She was looking at the neural telemetry, the brain scans taken after he was recovered from the reactor. There, she whispered, her mixed-color eyes reflecting the holographic data stream. There it is. It was not an injury. It was not trauma. It was architecture. Deep in the synaptic folds of his frontal lobe, buried beneath the normal pathways of memory and reason, were layers of impossibly dense, repeating quantum codes. They were biological, but they were not human. They were encrypted, layered like a nest of digital locks. Bio-encryption, she murmured, running a diagnostic. It's not a wound, it's a cage. Someone locked parts of his brain. They built a firewall around his memories. She cross-referenced the encryption signature with her database of precursor artifacts. A match flashed, weak but undeniable. The code structure was a simplified dialect of the same mathematical language the halo ring used. They did not just lock his memories, she realized, her blood running cold. They blocked his ability to talk to it, an external system. She looked at the image of the man who thought he was just a simple, unlucky commander. Who are you, Evan Locke? While Kira was excavating his mind, Evan was burrowing into the station. His maintenance role gave him access to the physical junctions, and from there, he could tap into the raw data flowing through the fiber of the station, bypassing Draith's new high-level security protocols. He was hunting the ghost signature Kira had found, the quantum echo from the assassin's attack. He traced it back from the explosion site, through 3 relays, and into a forgotten diagnostic node that had not been powered on in 5 years. And there, he found it. A ghost in the machine. A latent command string, designed to create the sensor blackout on Deck 7. It was elegant, efficient, and utterly terrifying. He stared at it, his stomach clenching. He recognized the logic. He recognized the syntax. He recognized the unconventional use of recursive loops to mask the command's origin. It was his own coding style. It was the exact style he had developed for the tactical simulation tools in the Aegis initiative, a signature as unique as his fingerprint. No, he whispered, his hands trembling. No, that's impossible. The command string was written with a level 10 authorization, the Archon clearance, a clearance level so high, Evan had not even known it existed. It was a rank that could command the station, the fleet, and probably the Halo ring itself. He, a mid-level commander, had a maximum clearance of 4. Was Draith right? Had he done this a sleeper agent, a Manchurian candidate, triggering his own programming? He tried to remember Frontier 9, those last 48 hours. Static. A gray wall. a pounding headache. He was still reeling, trying to process the idea that he might be his own worst enemy, when his maintenance comm crackled to life. It was Rila, his former second-in-command, her voice high and tight with panic. "Locke, thank God. Are you near Subsector 5? We have an emergency. A diplomatic emergency." "What's wrong?" Evan was already moving, sprinting through the ducts. "It's a Varathi delegation pod. A luxury transport. It just detached. The external clamps failed. It's drifting toward the station's exhaust vector, and the magnetic buffers are offline." "What? That's impossible," Evan snapped. "There are 16 redundant safeties on those clamps. Biometric, electronic, and physical. The entire system would have to fail." It did. Evan and the log show the final release command. The one that overrode all 16 safeties was authorized by your biometric ID. Evan froze in the conduit. "My ID. Draith suspended my access." "He suspended your high-level access." Rila's voice was near tears. "He left your basic, station-level biometrics active? For tracking purposes." "Evan, you have to fix this. If that pod hits the exhaust stream, the 5 delegates inside will be incinerated. It will be an act of war, and you will be the one who started it." He could see it on his OmniTools schematic. The red dot of the Varathi pod, drifting inexorably toward the blue cone of the primary ion drive. He had 6 minutes. "Kira," he barked into his covert comm. "I'm framed. A new attack. Varathi pod. Subsector 5. They used my biometrics. I'm trying to get to the external clamps, but I need you to find me a different angle." "On it." Kira's voice was ice. "The main sensors are conveniently offline for calibration, under Draith's new oversight. But he hasn't locked the secondary systems. The station's optical survey telescopes. They're low-tech, but they can see the hull. Rerouting one now. Stand by." Evan burst out onto the hull access gantry in Subsector 5. He could see the pod, a sleek black teardrop, tumbling slowly, just a few hundred meters away. The primary clamp controls were dead, the panel smashed. "Kira, I'm here, but the console is slag. I can't re-engage the clamps." "Forget the clamps. Locke, I see it. The telescope feed is up. The pod isn't just drifting. It's being pushed." "What?" "Look at the hull. 20 meters to your port. There's a maintenance drone. It's got a low-power grav pusher active, nudging the pod off its mooring. That's why the clamps failed. They were overridden by a physical force. The drone. It's running on a shielded frequency." Evan saw it. A standard-issue repair drone. Its manipulator arms clamped to the hull. A faint shimmer of gravimetric distortion between it and the pod. "I can't shoot it," Evan said, drawing the low-powered kinetic pistol he was allowed to carry as maintenance. "A miss will puncture the hull, or the pod. I need to get to it." "You do not have time." "Evan," Kira said, her voice frantic. "The pod hits the exhaust in 90 seconds. Just buy me time. Distract it. Can you flood its frequency?" "I can try." Evan took a deep breath. He clipped his safety line to the gantry rail, and then he jumped. He pushed off the gantry, a 30-meter leap across the open void, aiming for a handhold near the drone. Micro-thrusters on his maintenance suit fired, a pathetic attempt to steer. But his trajectory was mostly just dumb, human luck. He hit the hull hard, his magnetic boots clanging against the metal. The drone, its shielded sensors, finally registering him as a threat, swiveled. It disengaged the grav pusher and turned its high-torque repair arm toward him, the cutting laser at the tip flaring to life. "Kira, now!" he yelled. Kira slammed her console, dumping a gigawatt of broad-spectrum static into the drone's frequency. The drone spasmed. Its laser fired wild, searing a black scar across the hull, missing Evan by inches. In that second of confusion, Evan lunged. He did not try to hack it. He did not try to shut it down. He grabbed the cutting arm with one hand and, with the other, jammed his kinetic pistol into the drone's primary optical sensor and pulled the trigger. The drone's head exploded. It went limp, its manipulator arms releasing. "The pod!" Kira yelled. "It's still drifting 40 seconds." Evan scrambled over the drone's chassis. He found the grav pusher. It was locked in a push configuration. He could not reverse it. "I can't pull it back," he said, his mind racing. "But I can push it." "Kira, what's the trajectory if I push it away from the station?" "It will clear the exhaust, but it'll be on a deep space vector. They'll be lost." "Lost is better than fried. Tell Ryla to have a SAR team ready for launch. This is going to be rough." He aimed the grav pusher at the pod and slammed his fist onto the full power activation. The drone, even in its death throes, obeyed. A visible wave of force slammed into the pod. The delicate transport vessel shot away from the station, tumbling out of the exhaust vector and into the safe, black void. Evan clung to the hull, watching it go, his breath ragged in his helmet. He had saved them, and he had just been filmed, by a telescope, physically interacting with a drone that was pushing a Varathi pod into deep space. A drone that would have his fingerprints all over its controls. A drone that had been triggered by a system that was logged to his biometric ID. He was not just framed, he was gift-wrapped. The emergency session of the Helios Crown Security Council was not a trial. It was a formality. "The evidence is, unfortunately, irrefutable," High Prefect Draith said. His voice was a masterful performance of regret. "We have the log files, authenticated by Commander Locke's own biometric signature. We have the optical footage from Dr. Solin's telescope, showing Commander Locke at the scene, engaging with the drone. And now, my teams have recovered the drone. It has been manually interfaced with. His fingerprints are on the controls." "This is insane," Rila protested, standing. "He saved them. He pushed them out of the exhaust." "He pushed them into the void," Draith countered smoothly. "An act of abduction, perhaps, when his initial plan to destroy them failed. A volatile human lashing out, creating a hostage situation. It is, I am afraid, the only interpretation that fits all the facts." Admiral Petrov, the human hawk, looked sick. "Commander Locke has been suspended. He had no access." "He had maintenance access," Draith said. "And the loyalty of Dr. Kira Solin, a half-human scientist with her own agenda, and full access to the station's secondary systems. He also, apparently, has the loyalty of his former subordinate, Lieutenant Rila, who scrambled a search and rescue team before the incident was even reported." Rila went pale, realizing she, too, was now implicated. "Your Radiance," Draith said, turning to the hologram of Empress Astria, who presided over the meeting in silence. "This has gone too far. The Varathi Dominion is displeased. They see this as a targeted, human-led aggression. The gala is in jeopardy. The treaty is in jeopardy. I must, for the stability of the Concord, formally request the immediate arrest and incarceration of Commander Evan Locke, and the full detainment of Dr. Kira Solin for questioning." The room was silent. All eyes were on the Empress. Evan watched from Kira's lab, where he was already locked in. The feed was a secret one, piped in by Kira. Astria was still. The light from her skin was a calm, steady silver. She looked at Draith, her luminous eyes unreadable. "High Prefect," she said, her voice filling the room. "Your logic is sound. The evidence is compelling. The stability of this gala is my primary concern. You will have your arrest." Evan's heart stopped. He stared at the screen. Betrayal. It was real, and it was absolute. "However," the Empress continued, "I will not have this turned into a political circus. Commander Locke is, until proven guilty, An officer of my conquered. He will not be paraded in irons before the Varathi. She looked to the side. He will be remanded to conditional freedom, within the secured confines of the Halo Ring research sector. His expertise may yet be needed to undo the damage he has, allegedly, caused. Dr. Solon will be his keeper. Lock down her lab. Prefect. No one in, no one out. Not even you. Consider them in quarantine. Is that understood? Draith's expression flickered. It was not the full victory he had wanted. He wanted Evan in a cell, preferably his own, but to argue would be to overplay his hand. As you command, Your Radiance, he said with a short, stiff bow. It shall be done. The feed cut. The heavy doors to Kira's lab hissed, and a series of thick, magnetic bolts slammed into place. They were prisoners. Well, Evan said, sinking into a chair. That was a masterful move. She just put her two most valuable assets and her two biggest liabilities in the same box. And she handed Draith the key. She did not, Kira said, her face pale but her eyes burning. She was already at her console, her fingers flying. She locked him out. He cannot get to us. He cannot interrogate us. He cannot plant more evidence. She bought us time, but she did not buy us much. Time for what, Kira? We're trapped. We lost. No, she said, her voice intense. We did not. Draith wants the ring. You are connected to the ring. He just made the mistake of locking you in the same room with it. She walked over to a high-security containment unit in the corner of the lab. I was not sure. After what I found in your neural scans, I thought it was just a theory. But now, we have no other choice. She keyed in a long code. The unit hissed open, revealing a piece of the ring. It was not a large piece, just a fragment, perhaps half a meter long, recovered from a damaged exterior array. It was made of a material that was not metal, not crystal, but something in between. It was dark, but as Evan looked at it, he saw light moving inside it, like captured nebulae. What is that? He asked, feeling an irrational pull toward it. A mini-core, Kira said. A processing node. Think of it as a single neuron from Halo's brain. I have been trying to interface with it for a year. All I get is static. But it was not built to talk to me. She held out a neural interface crown, a spiderweb of fine wires and sensors. It was built to talk to you, Evan recoiled. Absolutely not. You saw my scans. Draith said I was enhanced. That Aegis? What if he's right? What if I'm some kind of weapon? You plug me into that. I could be the very thing we're trying to stop. And what if you are the only thing that can stop it? Kira shot back, her voice fierce. Draith is winning, Evan. He is out there right now, painting you as a human terrorist. He's using this. She jabbed a finger at the screen. To convince the Council to give him what he really wants, a direct security channel into the Halo Ring. He is using your volatility as an excuse to seize the most powerful weapon in the galaxy. We are out of moves. This is the only one left. Her words hit him harder than the gravity shear, weapon or person. He looked at the strange, dark artifact. He looked at Kira's desperate, brilliant face. What will it do? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. I do not know, she said, her honesty brutal. It might do nothing. It might show us how to fight back. It might unlock what they locked inside you. Or, she took a shaky breath, it might burn your mind to cinders. But it is a choice, and it is ours. Draith does not get to make it for us. He looked at the crown. He thought of Frontier 9. He thought of the gray static in his head. He was more afraid of that, of the unknown him, than he was of Draith. Do it, he said. He sat, and she placed the cool metal of the interface on his temples. I will be monitoring your vitals. The second you redline, I'm pulling the plug. Just try to relax. Let it see you." "Relax," Evan scoffed. "Right." Kira activated the link. It was not a shock. It was not a jolt. It was a fall. The lab dissolved. Kira's face, the consoles, the humming lights, all of it vanished, replaced by an infinite, roaring darkness. He was falling, tumbling end over end in a void filled with a sound like grinding mountains. He felt his own consciousness, his sense of Evan Locke, stretching thin, dissolving like smoke. This was a mistake, he thought, panic clawing at him. "I'm dying." Then he felt it. A presence. Vast, ancient, and impossibly cold. It was not a person. It was a mind the size of a solar system. It felt him. A tiny, warm speck of noise in its silent void. It prodded him. And the images came. Not memories. Not his. Anyway. He saw vast, silver structures rising from newborn worlds. He saw skies of colors he did not know the names for. He saw a network of light, a web connecting star to star. He heard a voice. It was not a voice. It was a knowing, imprinted directly onto his mind. It was speaking a language that felt familiar. He could not understand the words, but he understood the feeling. It was old, Impasulian, old Earth, ancient, pre-diaspora dialects he had only ever heard in historical archives. And through it all, a single, overwhelming sensation: I am home. The feeling was so strong, so profound, it shattered his panic. He was not an intruder. He was expected. The presence pulled back, as if in surprise. And then, as if a dam had broken, it showed him Draith. It showed him the Varathi ships, hiding in the dark, waiting. It showed him the ghost code, his code, and showed him the truth: it was not his. It was a copy, a brilliant, perfect forgery, planted in the system, waiting for a key, waiting for his biometric key. The pressure built. The information was too much. The ancient mind was too large. He felt a sharp, searing pain behind his eyes. The darkness was crushing him. "Kira," he screamed, though he made no sound. He snapped back to reality with a violent gasp. He pitched forward out of the chair, his hands flying to his head. Warm, thick liquid streamed from his nose. Blood. Evan, stay with me." Kira was kneeling over him, her face a mask of terror. "It saw me," he choked, the words thick. "It knows." "Evan, look," she said, grabbing his face, forcing him to look up. She was not pointing at him. She was pointing at the main lab window. Outside, in the void. The halo ring was glowing. It was no longer dormant. A soft, pearlescent shield of energy was expanding from it, enveloping the entire Helios crown in a protective, shimmering bubble. "It responded," Kira whispered, her eyes wide with awe. "You touched the node, and the entire ring woke up. It just automatically raised a defensive shield. It heard you." Evan, wiping the blood from his mouth, looked at his hands, then at the ring, then at Kira. The headache was still there, but the gray static was gone. In its place, the images, the ancient architecture, the web of light. Kira pulled up his brain scan on her monitor. The encrypted locks were still there, but they were fractured, cracked. Light was leaking through. She stared at the data, her mind racing, connecting the dots, the precursor code, the biological lock, the ring's response, the stories from Frontier 9, the deep, forgotten legends of the first weavers. "Custodian seed," she whispered, the words sounding alien on her own tongue. What did you call me?" Evan said, pushing himself up. "It's an old Lumerian text, a myth. It says the precursors, the first weavers, did not just leave. They left seeds, heirs, beings encoded with the ability to interface with their technology, beings who could act as custodians." She turned to him, her expression a mix of terror and wonder. It was not a military experiment. Evan, Aegis did not enhance you. They found you. You are a descendant, generations removed, from a line of humanity that was edited, designed. You are not just a new species in Concord. Evan. She pointed to the ring, now glowing with a light that recognized him. You are royalty. You are a piece of ancient, living technology, and you are the only thing that can truly control that. As if summoned by her words, the main council feed flickered back to life on the monitor. Draith was on screen, his face a mask of cold fury. The shield had not gone unnoticed. An unprompted hostile activation. He was thundering at the assembled admirals. The human terrorist, Locke, has somehow seized control of the ring. This is his final act of rebellion. He is holding the station hostage. He pointed a finger at the camera. We have no choice. I am formally invoking the Concord Emergency Charter. I demand a direct, high-bandwidth Varathi security channel be opened directly to the Halo Ring's core. We must bypass the local controls and seize the weapon before he can turn it on us all. The room was in chaos. The human admirals were shouting. The Lumerian courtiers were panicking. Evan and Kira looked at each other, the reality of their situation crashing down. He's done it, Evan said, his voice grim. He used the pod to frame me, and now he's using the shield I raised to get his prize. A new chime sounded. A private message from the Empress, routing past all of Draith's locks. It was 3 words. He is winning. Prove him wrong. Astria sat alone in her study, the shouts from the council chamber still echoing in her mind. Her conservative advisors were pleading with her. Accept his proposal. Your radiance for stability, for the gala. Let the Varathi handle this. It is a small price to pay for peace. She knew it was not a small price. It was the key. It was the entire kingdom. She looked out at the beautiful, terrifying shield that the man she had locked in a cage had just raised. She had no proof. She had no allies. All she had was a volatile, cynical, broken human soldier, and a half-breed scientist in a locked room. She had staked her entire empire on a hunch, and the game was about to end. The grand ballroom of the Helios crown was a cathedral of light. Silks and crystalline banners from 100 different worlds hung suspended in the air, catching the light of the white dwarf Helios and fracturing it into a billion shimmering rainbows. Delegates and ambassadors, a living kaleidoscope of species, mingled and drank. Their voices a polite, curated murmur. The air hummed with exotic perfumes and the sophisticated, multi-harmonic strains of a Lumerian string orchestra. From his vantage point, 4 levels down in a cramped, unlit service junction, it all sounded like static. Evan Locke was a ghost, just as the Empress had commanded. He wore a simple, black, high-weave tactical suit, his maintenance cover now discarded. His new Omni tool, the one Kira had built from scratch, was grafted to his wrist, its interface dark. He did not need the screen. Since touching the Halo node, he did not just read the station's data. He felt it. The entire Helios crown was a symphony, and he could feel every instrument. The thrum of the life support, the pulse of the gravity plating, the whisper of the data streams. And beneath it all, a sour, discordant note, Dreth. He's live, Kira's voice whispered in his ear, a tight, encrypted channel. She was still locked in her lab, his eyes and ears on the high-level grid. Draith just initiated the final handshake protocol for the gala. It's hidden inside the treaty's ceremonial broadcast. He's using the peace treaty as a login prompt, Evan muttered, tracing the phantom data stream with his mind. It felt greasy, wrong. It's worse than that, Kira said, her voice strained. It's not just a login. He's citing an obscure clause in Concord's founding charter, Article of Shared Defense. He's going to use the signing of the treaty to declare a system integration event. He's claiming that to ensure the peace, the Varathi security grid must permanently merge with the Halo's defense network. A merger, Evan said, the word tasting like ash. He's not building a back door. He's marching in the front gate with a military band. Once that handshake completes, Evan, he'll have a permanent, system-level hook into the ring. He will not need to bypass security. He will be security. The gala starts in 30 minutes. The signing is scheduled for 1 hour after that. Plenty of time for a party to go to hell, Evan said. He closed his eyes, leaning his head back against a cold conduit. The pressure in his skull was immense. He was terrified, not of Drath, but of the vast, cold presence of the ring, waiting silently at the edges of his perception. His covert comm chimed. A different signal. The Empress. A summons. Not to the ballroom, but to a private antechamber just behind the main stage. He moved through the ducts like a shadow, his arrival marked only by the hiss of a hidden service panel. She was alone. The sight of her stopped him cold. She was not the politician in robes or the diplomat in a cloak. She was the Empress. She wore the full Lumerian regalia, a gown that seemed woven from starlight and solidified aurora. A complex, delicate crown of living light and metal rested on her brow. The silver patterns on her skin were brilliant, pulsing with a slow, hypnotic rhythm. She was, in a word, breathtaking. And she looked as stressed as he felt. "Your radiance," he said, emerging from the shadows. "This is unsecured. Where are your guards?" "Outside," Astria said, her voice tight. "Give me 1 minute of peace before I walk onto that stage and lie to 1,000 delegates. Dr. Solon has informed me of the merger protocol." "Then you have to stop it," Evan said. "Call it off. Postpone the gala." "And do what?" she countered, turning to face him. The light from her crown cast shifting patterns on his black uniform. "Admit I have a traitor I cannot prove. Admit that our entire security network is compromised. The Varathi Dominion would not see it as a delay. They would see it as a declaration of war. Death has backed me into a corner. He wins if I sign, and he wins if I do not. All he needs is for me to hesitate." She looked away, her gaze fixed on the ornate door that led to the ballroom. "I must walk out there. I must give the speech. I must raise the glass. I must play my part. And you, Commander, must play yours. You and Dr. Solon are the only ones who can stop that handshake before it completes. You are my only variable." The pressure, the fear, the impossible weight of the last few days. It all crested in him. He was just a soldier. She was an Empress. And they were both just standing in a hallway, waiting for the galaxy to explode. He let out a short, harsh breath that was almost a laugh. The sheer absurdity of it. "Your radiance," he said, his voice rough. She looked at him, surprised by the change in his tone. "When this is over," Evan said, meeting her luminous gaze. "And I mean after. When the smoke clears and the reports are filed, will you be my date to the gala party?" Astria stared at him. The luminous patterns on her skin stilled. He had just breached every protocol of rank, species, and decorum in a single sentence. "The real one," he pressed on, the words tumbling out, a desperate bit of gallows humor. "Not this parade of knives. A real dinner. No guards, no traitors. I don't even know. I'll wear a tie or something." For a long second, she remained perfectly, regally still. He thought he would be arrested. He thought she would call the guards. Then, the corner of her mouth quivered. A genuine, human-like smile that lit her face more than any crown. The light in her eyes warmed. "Bold, Commander," she said, her voice a low murmur. "Survive first." The spell was broken by a chime from the door. A voice called out, "Your radiance. It is time." Astria's smile vanished, replaced by the mask of the Empress. "The stage is set. Commander, do not fail me." "I'll do my best," he said. "Do better," she replied. And then she swept through the doors, a vision of light and power, leaving him alone in the shadows. The gala began. The speeches were eloquent. The toasts were flowery. The music swelled, from Evan's position in the central tech spine. He watched it all on a dozen monitors. He saw Astria, smiling, raising her glass to the Varathi delegation. He saw Draith, standing near the edge of the stage, his obsidian face a mask of polite observance. "He's starting," Kira whispered in his ear. "The handshake has begun. It's slow, burrowing deep into the Halo's archival memory. He's masking it under the historical data being shared for the treaty." "I feel it," Evan said. His head was pounding. The grumble was now a high-frequency whine in his skull. He could feel the alien code of the Varathi grid touching the pure, ancient language of the ring. It felt like a violation, like a wire scraping on a nerve. "It's in the primary data hub. I'm moving." He ran. Not through corridors, but through the station's skeleton, climbing ladders, sliding down grav chutes. His world a blur of metal and wiring. He was halfway to the hub when the music stopped. It did not fade. It just cut off, replaced by a sudden, jarring silence, followed by 1,000 screams. "Evan, what did you do?" Kira yelled. "Nothing, I'm not even there yet." He scrambled to a sensor panel. The feed from the grand ballroom was chaos. Draith had not waited for the treaty. He had made his move. The artificial gravity in the entire ballroom had not just failed, it had reversed. Hundreds of delegates, dignitaries, and staff were pinned to the ornate, 30-meter-high ceiling, tables, chairs, fountains of exotic liquids, and shards of crystalline glassware were suspended with them. A floating, terrifying debris field. "He's initiated a full system lockdown," Kira shouted, her voice frantic. "He's citing a terrorist threat. He's locked me out of the grid." "He hasn't locked me out," Evan snarled. On the monitor, he saw the ballroom doors hiss open. A squad of 12 Varathi Special Forces, Draith's personal guard, marched in. Their heavy magnetic boots locked them to the floor. They wore full, black combat armor, their faces hidden by reflective visors. They were not rescuing. They were advancing, their weapons raised. "Cavalry!" Draith's voice boomed over the station's address system, overriding the alarms. "A human terrorist element has seized the station. Do not panic. My forces are moving to secure the Empress." Evan watched as 2 of the soldiers aimed their rifles, not at a threat, but at the ceiling, directly at the cluster of Lumerian nobles surrounding Astria. "They're going to rescue her," Evan breathed. "By shooting the people around her. It's a kidnapping, disguised as an intervention." He reached the data hub, a nexus of pulsing fiber-optic cables. He did not have time to find a console. He jammed his Omni-tool directly into the primary junction, closing his eyes, pushing his consciousness into the stream. The Halo ring was screaming. Draith's lockdown was a clumsy, brutal cage. But Evan was not part of the cage. He was the custodian seed. He was inside. He ignored the lockdown protocols. He ignored Draith's commands. He reached past them, deep into the ring's core functions. He found the gravity controls. In the ballroom, 2 Varathi soldiers fired. Their pulse rounds streaked toward the ceiling. At that exact instant, Evan pushed. He did not restore the gravity. He sculpted it. He created a 5-meter bubble of normal gravity directly around the Empress. She and her nobles fell, a controlled 2-meter drop, landing on their feet as the pulse rounds seared the air where they had been seconds before. The Varathi squad stared in disbelief. "Now, the rest," Evan muttered, his knuckles white. He began to play the gravity plating like a musical instrument. He targeted the clusters of floating civilians. In small, precise patches. He reversed the gravity, not all at once, but in gentle, controlled waves. People began to fall, softly, landing on carpets and empty floor spaces, cushioned by the momentary, selective reduction of the G-force. Then, he turned on the Varathi. He targeted the plating directly under the main squad. He did not reverse it. He flickered it, from 1G to 0G to 2Gs, in a chaotic, rapid-fire pulse. The soldiers, their mag boots programmed for a stable 1G environment, were thrown into chaos. Their boots failed to find purchase. They were slammed to the floor, then thrown into the air, then slammed down again, their formations breaking, their discipline shattered. "He is improvising with gravity," Kira whispered, watching on her locked-out feed. "The station's AI cannot even track those commands. They are originating nowhere." Evan was breathing heavily, sweat beading on his forehead. The mental strain was colossal. He had saved the civilians. He had neutralized the squad. But he had not stopped Draith. He saw the High Prefect on the stage, his face a mask of cold fury. He had not anticipated this. He had not anticipated Evan. Draith tapped a communicator on his wrist. "Plan B, now." Evan felt it before he saw it. A surge in the outer ring, a buildup of plasmoid energy. "Bombs," he yelled. "Kira, he's got bombs on the outer hull. I cannot see them, Evan. I am locked out. I can feel them." He tried to get a lock, to disarm them through the ring. But he was too late. A series of 5 sequenced explosions ripped across the Helios Crown's outer superstructure. The entire station shuddered, a deep, groaning sound of tortured metal. In the ballroom, the great transparent wall overlooking Helios cracked, a spiderweb of fractures spreading across its surface. Debris from the ceiling heavy, ornate paneling shaken loose by the blast rained down. Evan watched, his heart stopping, as a huge piece of metal broke free and fell directly toward the stage, where Astria was helping a wounded delegate. "No!" he roared, slamming his fist into the console, pushing with all his mental might. He tried to create a gravity bubble, to push it aside, but he was too far away, his control too fractured by the explosions. The metal struck the stage. Astria was thrown by the impact, her body slamming into the far wall. She did not get up. "Your radiance," he screamed. The station's primary AI, its voice, a terrified monotone, blared over the alarms. "Warning! Hull breaches detected. Catastrophic damage imminent. Activating legacy defense mode." The light on the station changed. The bright, sterile whites and lavenders were replaced by a deep, pulsing, amber battle light. A new hum, ancient and terrible, vibrated through the bulkheads. "Evan," Kira's voice was a terrified whisper. He did it. The explosions were a failsafe. They triggered the ring's automated threat response. A full combat lockdown. It is called the Scythe Protocol. It is not just a shield. It is a weapon's hot state. And it has locked everything out. Evan was already running, his mind reeling. Astria. He had to get to Astria. He burst into the ballroom, his pistol in his hand. The scene was apocalyptic. Civilians were huddled, crying. The Varathi soldiers were groaning, pinned under debris. And on the stage, the Empress was stirring. She was alive. Her crown was gone. There was a long, bloody gash on her temple, and the light on her skin was flickering. A pale, frightened pulse. But she was pushing herself to her feet, her gaze sweeping the room, her hand outstretched to her guards, who were slowly recovering. "Secure the perimeter," she commanded, her voice shaking but unbroken. "Triage the wounded. Get me a status report." She saw Evan, her eyes, luminous and pained, locked with his across the ruined hall. His choice was immediate, primal. He was a soldier. His charge was wounded. He sprinted toward the stage, his only thought to get to her, to stand between her and the next threat. His covert comm chimed. It was Kira. "Evan, stop! Listen to me, Drath is gone." "He's not in the ballroom," she cried. "The legacy defense mode. It opened a path. It requires a custodian to authorize it. He cannot do it, so he is going to the core. He is going to try to interface with it directly, to force it. If he does that while it is in a combat state, he will not just control it. He will break it. He will tear this entire system apart." Evan froze, his feet planted on the ruined carpet. He looked at the stage. Astria was 50 meters away. She was bleeding. She was vulnerable. He looked up, toward the central spire, where the Halo Ring's core interface was located, a kilometer of chaos away. His duty. His instinct. "Your Radiance," he yelled into his comm, switching to her private channel. "Drath is going for the core. I have to stop him." She looked at him, her hand pressed to her bleeding temple. She understood the choice. She understood the sacrifice. She was a ruler. She knew what assets were. "Go," she commanded, her voice a pained, iron rasp. A ruler can stand her ground. She locked eyes with him, and in that moment, he was not just her soldier. He was something else. A custodian must move. He did not understand the full meaning of the words. He did not have time. He just knew it was an order. And it was the right one. He spun on his heel, leaving his Empress in the smoking ruins of her own party, and ran. He ran for the core. The heart of the Helios crown was not a room. It was a cathedral. Evan burst through the final pressure door, his lungs burning, and staggered to a halt. The chaos of the amber-lit station died behind him, replaced by a vast, silent, circular chamber. The walls were not walls, but a 360-degree view of the Halo Ring, hanging in the void, now pulsing with a terrifying golden amber scythe protocol light. In the center of the chamber, a swirling, DNA-like helix of pure, white energy descended from the ceiling and vanished into the floor. It was the core interface. The ring's mind, made manifest. The air was cool and hummed with a power so immense it felt like a physical weight. "Evan, he is there." Kira's voice was a strained whisper in his ear, patched through the chaos. "I am barely holding this connection. He is already interfacing." She was right. Standing on the dais at the base of the light helix was High Prefect Drath. He was not alone. 4 Varathi technicians, encased in sleek, black interface armor, were kneeling at consoles that had been forcibly grafted onto the ring's pristine platform. They were a virus, a dark infection in a sacred space. Drath turned, slowly. He was not wearing a helmet. His obsidian face was calm, his sapphire dark eyes luminous with a terrifying, ecstatic light. He looked like a priest at his own dark altar. "The custodian," Drath said, his voice echoing in the chamber, amplified by the station's comms. "You are too late, Locke. The invocation is already in progress." "Shut it down, Drath," Evan yelled, his pistol raised. It felt like a child's toy in this vast, holy room. "It's over. The Empress is alive. Your squad is neutralized." "Squad," Drath let out a low, reptilian laugh. The squad was a distraction. The bombs were a failsafe. All of it was simply to get the ring to this precise state. The Scythe Protocol. A state of war. A state where it is vulnerable, desperate for a commander. And he spread his arms wide, am here to answer. "You serve the Varathi Dominion," Evan said, advancing cautiously. "This is treason." "I serve order," Drath corrected, his voice rising with a zealot's fire. "The Varathi are a means to an end. I serve the cult of ascendancy. You see, Locke, the Concord is a failure. It celebrates weakness. It mistakes diversity for strength. It allows volatile species like your own to run rampant, checking the progress of the whole. The universe requires a firmer hand, a first design logic. As he spoke, he nodded to his technicians. They slammed their fists onto their consoles. A new energy stream, dark and oily, a deep, sickening purple, began to flow from their consoles and into the pure white helix. The central light form shuddered, and the white light began to dim, corrupted by the invasion. The station groaned, a deep, structural shiver. The merger, Kira breathed. He's forcing the system integration he wanted. He's injecting his Varathi grid code directly into the core. The ring is a tool, Commander, Draith continued, his eyes fixed on the twisting purple light. It is a weapon, a shield, and a symbol. He who holds it, holds the future. And I will use it to prune the galaxy, to burn away the weak, to force an evolution, an ascendancy. And it will all be done under the banner of conquered peace. You're a fanatic, Evan said, his disgust thick. I am a visionary. Draith looked at him, his gaze dismissive. Now, give me the weapon, your toy pistol. Try and take it, Evan fired. The kinetic round sped across the room and slammed into an invisible shield, 5 feet in front of Draith, dissolving in a flash of purple light. The Varathi technicians had raised a combat barrier. I have no time for your human impulses, Draith said. Evan ran to the nearest open console, one of the ring's own interfaces, and slammed his Omni tool into it. Access denied. System in legacy lockdown. He tried an override. Access denied. He tried a hard reboot. Access denied. Custodian-level authority required. Draith laughed again. You are a gifted monkey, Locke. Truly. Your improvisations with gravity were inspired, but you are still a monkey, pounding on a door you cannot even see. This, he tested to the core, requires blood that remembers the first design, and your blood is thin, young, impure. Blood that remembers. The words hit Evan like a physical blow, echoing what Kira had said. Custodian seed. Kira, Evan whispered, stepping back from the useless console, his heart hammering. He's right. I cannot hack it. I cannot get in. Evan, Kira's voice was high, desperate. Listen to me. He is not right. He is wrong. He is trying to force the lock with a crowbar. You are the key. Those locks in your head. The Aegis program. The reason you hear the grumbles, it is all connected. So, what do? You have to sync, like you did with the mini-core in the lab, but not just a touch, a full synchronization. You have to open yourself to it, all of it. Let it see you. Let it see the locks in your mind. It is the only way. Evan stared at the swirling, corrupted helix. The purple energy was spreading, climbing higher. The thought of touching that, of becoming one with that vast, screaming coldness, he had felt his skin crawled. Kira, the last time it almost tore me apart. This is the whole ring. It will burn my brain out. It will wipe me. I will not be Evan anymore. I know, she cried, and he could hear the tears in her voice. I know. It is a risk. Aegis tried to turn you into a weapon. This might finish the job. You might become a thing, a living interface. But Evan, look on his Omni tool. A feed from her lab blinked to life. It was a tactical display of the system, the halo ring, pulsing in amber, and its primary weapon array, the celestial cannon Draith had spoken of, was charging. Energy was gathering at one of its nodes, a terrible, growing star of amber light, and its target solution was plotted in a stark red line. No, Evan breathed. The line pointed directly to a small, blue-green world in a frontier sector. Edenfall, Kira whispered. Your home world. He is not just taking control. He is making a statement. He is going to inaugurate his new order by executing your entire planet. Drath smiled, watching Evan's face. A gift, Commander, to celebrate my ascendancy, the symbolic end of the volatile human era. It will be seen as a righteous, necessary cleansing after your terrorist attack. The choice was gone. Evan looked at the core. He looked at the red line pointing at his home. He thought of Frontier 9, of the feeling of being abandoned, of being a pawn. He thought of Astria, bleeding on the stage, trusting him. A ruler can stand her ground. A custodian must move. He finally understood. A ruler protected her people. A custodian protected the system. I will not be your weapon, he whispered, speaking to Drath, to Aegis, to the ring itself. I will not be your key. I will be the hand that turns it. He made his decision. He would not be defined by what they tried to make him. He would define himself. He ran forward, past the useless console, and broke through the purple shield. It felt like diving into ice, a resistance that tore at his skin. But he pushed through. He reached the dais. He stood before the swirling column of corrupted light. And Evan Locke, the gifted monkey, the volatile human, the mid-level commander, placed his bare hand on the core of the halo ring. He did not surrender to it. He did not ask. He pushed. He flooded the ring with himself. He pushed his rage, his grief for Frontier 9, the faces of his lost unit, their last words, the static of their comms. He pushed his cynicism, his exhaustion, his black, bitter humor. He pushed his terror of the cold, dark void. And then, he pushed the rest. He pushed the memory of Kira, her fierce, brilliant eyes. He pushed the image of Astria, the shock on her face when he asked her for a date, the ghost of her smile. He pushed the feeling of the grass on Edenfall. He pushed the sheer, stubborn, human spite that had kept him alive in that reactor for 3 days. You want blood that remembers, he roared, his voice unheard, his mind screaming into the core. Remember this. The ring did not just respond. It recoiled. The vast, cold intelligence he had touched before recoiled from the raw, chaotic, hot flood of his humanity. It was not a machine being given a command. It was an ancient, sleeping mind being slapped awake. The locks in his brain, the bio-encryption. The cage Aegis had built, they did not crack. They vaporized. The full, unfiltered memory of the first Weavers flooded his mind. He saw it. He saw them. They were not aliens. They were human. Ancient, primeval humans, standing on 1 billion worlds. Their hands weaving the very fabric of light into transit networks. They had not just found the star lanes. They had built the playground, the Lumerians, the Varathi. All of them were the canonical upstarts. They were the children, playing in a house built by an ancestor they had forgotten. Aegis, the Concord. They had all lied. They had all hidden the truth, terrified of what it meant. The halo ring recognized his blood. It was not the blood of a seed. It was the blood of an architect. Welcome. High Custodian. The voice was not a voice. It was a fact, settling into his bones. The purple, oily Varathi code, which had been a terrifying virus, now looked pathetic. It was a child's scribble on a master's canvas. With a single thought, Evan erased it. He seized the corrupting energy and pushed it back, out of the core. The Varathi technicians screamed as their consoles exploded, a wave of pure, white energy throwing them back, their armor smoking. The central helix flared, pure white, brighter than the sun. No, Drath shrieked, his composure shattered, his ecstatic trance broken. Impossible, you are an ape. I am, Evan said. He turned. His eyes were burning with a white, cold light. He felt the ring, every sensor, every plate, every weapon as an extension of his own body. And this is my jungle. He looked at the tactical display. The cannon was still charging, aimed at Edenfall. He did not try to stop it. He did not try to disarm it. He aimed it, with a thought. He wrenched the entire cannon array, a structure the size of a moon, and pointed it at an empty, blank sector of deep space. And he fired. A beam of cohesive, incandescent light, a kilometer wide, erupted from the halo ring, silent, beautiful, and utterly devastating. It streaked past the Helios crown, a declaration of power that vaporized a rogue asteroid belt 10 million kilometers away. The ring was awake, and it was his. Draith stared, his face a mask of disbelief and primal terror. What are you? Just a volatile human, Evan said. He felt the grav plates under his feet. He smiled. My station, my rules. He flickered the gravity under Draith's feet, the Varathi, his predatory grace useless, his combat shield gone, stumbled, falling to one knee. He was just a soldier, his god now dead. He snarled, rage overriding his fear, and pulled a curved, serrated blade from his back. He lunged, a purely physical attack. Evan did not meet his charge. He was a monkey. He was a canonical upstart. He was a human. He stepped aside, not with grace, but with practicality. As Draith's lunge carried him past, Evan activated the grav plate Draith was on, dropping it to 0G. The Varathi, expecting to find a purchase, found none. He floated, helpless, for half a second. It was all Evan needed. He did not fight with Varathi honor. He did not engage in a noble duel. He grabbed a shattered piece of a Varathi console, a heavy, sharp-edged piece of metal, and as Draith began to fall back to the deck, Evan swung it like a club. He did not strike Draith's head, or his chest. He struck his hand, the one holding the knife. There was a sickening crack of obsidian bone. The knife clattered to the floor. Draith howled, a high, thin sound of agony, clutching his shattered hand. Evan kicked the knife away. He stood over the High Prefect, his chest heaving. The white light in his eyes slowly faded, replaced by his own, tired, human blue. It is over, Evan panted. Draith cradled his broken hand, his reptilian eyes burning with a hatred that was now purely personal. He had been defeated, not by a god, not by a superior species, by a monkey. In the core, the great helix of light pulsed, calm, pure, and steady. The station's alarm stopped. The amber combat lighting faded, replaced by a soft, clean white. Evan stood in the center of the cathedral, the sole, victorious high priest. He was Evan Locke. He was the high custodian, and he had a party to get back to. The vast, white helix of the halo ring's core pulsed with a soft, steady, benign light. The amber scythe protocol was gone. The station's groans had ceased. The air in the chamber was cool and silent, the only sound the ragged, rasping breath of Evan Locke. He stood, swaying, his hand still resting on the interface. The flood of ancient knowledge, the memories of the first weavers, receded from the forefront of his mind. It did not disappear. It settled, like a new, impossibly vast ocean floor beneath the familiar surface of his own consciousness. He felt layered. He was Evan Locke. But he was also the high custodian. The white light in his eyes faded, leaving them his own tired, human blue. He was exhausted, more tired than he had ever been, but he was also vibrating with a quiet, terrifying power. He's in stasis, Kira's voice whispered in his ear, small and shaken. Evan, your vitals, your brain activity is off the charts. Are you okay? Evan looked at Draith, who was curled on the floor, clutching his shattered hand, his reptilian eyes burning with a hatred that was no longer zealous, but merely personal. Just, Evan panted. Peachy. He would not kill him. To kill him now, in the heart of the ring, would make him a martyr. It would prove Draith's point about volatile humans. He had won by not becoming the weapon Draith, and Aegis had wanted him to be. He looked at the pure white light of the core. He did not need a console. He simply asked. Request granted. High Custodian in the ruined Grand Ballroom. Empress Astria Nyx, her face smeared with blood and grime, looked up as her personal comm chimed with a signal that was not supposed to exist. It was a direct, system-level override from the Halo core. Your Radiance. Evan's voice was rough. I have the package. He is alive. I am requesting a pickup. Your guards only. No one else. Astria stared at the comm, then at her Royal Guard captain. Go, she ordered, her voice clear and strong. The core interface chamber. Commander Locke has a prisoner for us. The arrest was a quiet, anticlimactic affair. The Royal Guard, their mother-of-pearl armor pristine against the ruined Varathi consoles, simply lifted the snarling, defeated Draith to his feet. He said nothing. He only looked at Evan. A look of profound, species-deep loathing. The rest of the Varathi delegation, the legitimate ones who had been floating in the ballroom, were horrified. When they were freed, and the facts became clear that Draith, one of their own, had used them as pawns in a fanatical plot to seize the Halo and execute a genocidal first strike. Their reaction was not aggression. It was a shame. Ambassador Vorlag, the head of their delegation, personally surrendered his sidearm to Empress Astria. This is not the Varathi Dominion, he stated, his deep voice shaking. Draith is a heretic, a follower of the Ascendancy. We will cooperate in any way. This treaty must be preserved. The immediate threat was over, but the political war had just begun. The next day, the Helios Crown was a station of whispers. The Grand Ballroom had been hastily cleaned, but the great transparency overlooking Helios was still a fractured, spider-webbed mess, a constant reminder of the violence. An emergency session of the Concord Council was convened. Every species was present. Every eye was on two beings, Empress Astria, who wore a simple silver diadem over a subtle, glowing bandage on her temple, and Commander Evan Locke. Evan stood in the back, near the human delegation, his arms crossed. He wore his dress uniform, the one Kira had insisted he find, and he had never felt more like an imposter. He was just a commander. He was just the guy who had gotten lucky, who had a weird connection to the station's tech. He just wanted to go back to his dark room. Astria rose. Her voice was quiet, but it filled the vast, damaged hall. We were betrayed, she began, her luminous eyes sweeping the room. Not by the Varathi Dominion, but by a fanatic hiding within it. A fanatic who preyed on our fears, who manipulated our systems, and who almost brought this Concord to ruin. She recounted the events, her voice clear and precise. The failed abduction, the framing of Commander Locke, the deliberate accident with the Varathi pod, the assault on the gala. High Prefect Draith, she said, her voice turning to ice, believed that our way was weak. He believed our trust in one another was a flaw. He was wrong. That trust, though tested, is our greatest strength. She turned her gaze toward the back of the room, her eyes finding Evan. He instinctively tensed, wishing he could blend into the bulkhead. The plot was uncovered and ultimately defeated by an officer who had every reason to despise the system that failed him, a man who was suspended, framed, and hunted. A human, she said, letting the word hang in the air. Who our system had never bothered to evaluate correctly. He did not fight with rage, as his accuser predicted. He fought with precision, with courage, and ultimately, with mercy. I speak, of course, of Commander Evan Locke. All eyes turned to him. Evan gave a stiff, miserable nod, feeling the heat rising in his collar. However, Astria continued, turning back to the council, the how of his victory is a revelation. A Lumerian aide, his face pale, stepped forward. As per your order, we ran a full diagnostic on the Halo ring after Commander Locke interfaced with it. The Scythe protocol is dormant. The ring is calm. But its internal system log, a log that has not been updated in 10 millennia, has a new entry. He brought up the image on the main hologram. It was a single line of elegant, ancient code, status active. Designation, Prime Custodian, Evan Locke. A stunned silence filled the room. Prime Custodian. It was a title from myth, from children's stories about the first Weavers. It was not a conquered rank. It was not a rank at all. It was something else. Evan stared at it, his stomach clenching. He felt like the universe had just played a colossal, cosmic prank on him. And that, Astria said, her voice steady, brings us to our next speaker, Dr. Kira Solon, who, I might add, has earned her new title as head of Conquered Precursor Research. Kira stepped forward. She was no longer the fringe scientist in the boiler room. She was composed, her mixed heritage features clear and confident. She did not present a theory. She presented facts. For generations, Kira began, her voice resonating with an authority she had never been allowed before. We have operated under a flawed assumption. We believed the first Weavers were a mythical, ancient alien race who left these tools behind. We, the Lumerians, the Varathi, the Xylosians, and the humans were newcomers, inheriting their scraps. She brought up the data from Evan's neural scans, the bioencryption. We were wrong, she said. The Aegis initiative on Earth was not an enhancement program. It was an archaeological one. They had discovered what we are just learning now, that the ability to interface with the Halo ring is not a universal skill. It is a biological lock, a lock for which a specific bloodline holds the key. She then displayed the linguistic analysis from the ring itself, the echoes Evan had heard, cross-referenced with deep archive files of pre-diaspora human languages. They were a perfect match. The conclusion is inescapable, Kira said, her luminous violet eye seeming to glow. Humanity is not a new species. They are not canonical upstarts. They are, in fact, direct descendants of the first Weavers. They are not the tenants in this house. They were among its architects. The explosion in the council was louder than Draith's bombs. It was a detonation of history. The human admirals were white-faced, stunned into silence. The more ancient species, the ones who had built their identities on being the elder races, were sputtering, their entire political framework collapsing. This changes everything, one Lumerian elder whispered. No, Astria said, her voice cutting through the noise. It changes nothing, and it changes everything. It does not change our goal piece, unity, but it does change our foundation. It recontextualizes our history. It proves that our destinies are more intertwined than we ever knew. The human race is not our subordinate. They are, and always have been, our partners. The rebalancing had begun. The political fallout was immediate. Some of the older species were furious, seeing it as a human power grab. But most, especially after the Varathi themselves vouched for Draith's fanaticism, saw the truth a system built on a lie was weak. A system that acknowledged its true foundation, however strange, was strong. Evan did not stay for the rest. He slipped out, his head pounding. He was not a first Weaver. He was a guy from Edenfall. He was a commander. This was all too much. He spent the next 3 days in Kira's lab, which had become his unwilling sanctuary. He could not sleep. When he did not dream of Frontier 9. He dreamed of structure. He saw the glowing, intricate webs of light that connected star systems. The lattice the Weavers had built. He saw equations bloom in his mind like flowers, describing the bend of gravity around a specific planet. He heard the constant, low-level thrum of the halo ring, a whisper in the back of his mind, asking for optimization. It wanted him to reroute a power relay because it would be 0.002% more efficient. He was going insane. "I am not a person anymore," he said, pacing the lab on the third day. His eyes red-rimmed. Kira and Astria were both there, the first time the three of them had been alone since the attack. "I am an interface," he said, gesturing wildly. "I am a biological key. I am the thing Aegis wanted to build. A weapon that thinks it is a man. How do I know any of my choices were mine? How do I know the ring did not just use my feelings to get what it wanted?" Kira let him rant. When he was done, she tapped her console. "The ring is a machine. Evan. A staggeringly complex one. But a machine. It presented you with a threat solution, eliminate the target, Edenfall. That was its scythe logic." She looked at him. "You ignored it. You, Evan Locke, overrode that logic. You aimed a planet-killing weapon at empty space. You, Evan Locke, chose to use a gravity plate and a piece of metal to break Draith's hand, rather than snap his neck with a single thought. The ring gave you power. Your humanity. Your stubborn, volatile, beautifully human morality told it what to do. You are not its weapon. Evan, it is your tool." "She is right," Astria said, her voice soft. She was sitting on a lab stool, her imperial robes exchanged for a simple, gray tunic. Draith wanted that power. He believed it would make him a god. It was given to you. And what was your first thought? That it was too much. That you were not qualified. Power does not corrupt. Commander. It reveals. And it revealed you. He wanted to believe them. He stared at his hands. The hands that had held a console, and the hand that had touched a god machine. Astria left. Kira gave him a sedative. He finally slept. When he woke, it was dark. He was not in the lab. He was in his own quarters. The small, gray, functional box he called home. Someone, probably Rila, had had him moved. He sat on the edge of his bunk, the silence of his room a stark contrast to the roaring in his head. The ring was quiet, but it was there. He could feel it, a mountain at his back. A soft, physical knock echoed on his door. Not a chime. A knock. He opened it. Empress Astria Nix stood in the corridor. She was alone. No royal guards. No entourage. She was wearing a simple, dark blue civilian outfit. Her Lumerian light patterns a soft, resting silver. In her hands, she held a simple, white thermal box. "I," Evan stamped. "Completely wrong-footed. Your Radiance. Should I call your guard?" "No," she said. "And please, do not. I am Lady Nyra this evening. I was told," she said, her voice a little uncertain, "that this is the appropriate protocol for a human debriefing. I believe they are called Red Star noodles. From the lower concourse market. They smell pungent." He stared at the box, then at her. He stepped back, wordlessly, and let her in. His room was tiny. A bunk, a desk, a chair, a locker. She looked around, her gaze taking in the Spartan, military tidiness. It was a room for a man who did not expect to live anywhere for long. She placed the box on his small desk. "There are no protocols for this, Commander. For what you are. For what we are." "I do not even know what I am," he admitted, sitting on the edge of his bunk. It was the only other place to sit. She opened the box. The smell of synthetic soy, ginger, and fried noodles filled the room. She pulled out 2 sets of disposable chopsticks and 2 steaming containers. She handed one to him. She took the desk chair. For a full minute, the High Custodian of the Halo Ring, and the Empress of the Celestial Concord, sat in a tiny, gray room and ate noodles out of cardboard boxes. It was the most normal Evan had felt in his entire life. "I trusted you," she said quietly, setting her container down. "In that duct, when you were yelling at me, when you accused me of political vanity, I trusted you. I did not know you were a custodian seed. I did not know you were a descendant of the first weavers. I knew you were the man who noticed a 0.03% frequency misalignment, and who was too stubborn to die. I trusted Evan Locke." She met his gaze, her luminous eyes clear and honest. "That matters more than any title. That is what I am betting my empire on." He looked at the noodles, then at her. The vast, cold ocean in his mind felt a little warmer. Astria smiled, the Lady Nyra smile, full of wit and a hint of mischief. "You asked me for a date, Commander." Evan winced. "Your radiance. I was under duress, and I am pretty sure you were bleeding." "I was not. It was a bad joke." "Was it?" she asked. She leaned forward, her voice dropping. "You realize, of course, that Prime Custodian is a title from the First Weaver's Covenant. We found the text. It is a rank that does not report to the Conquered. It does not report to the Empress. It is an independent, ancient charter. Systemically, technically," she smiled. "You outrank everyone on this station, including me." Evan stared at her, a new, fresh wave of panic rising in his throat. He, a guy who hated parades, outranked an Empress. He had gone from prisoner to janitor to God Emperor in 3 days. He looked at her, at the genuine, teasing light in her eyes. He had no protocol for this. He had no training. He defaulted to the only defense he had ever had. "I'm still terrible at small talk. Your radiance." Astria laughed, a real, bright, clear laugh that filled the tiny, gray room. "Good," she said, her voice soft. "I have entire legions of courtiers who are experts at small talk. I could use someone who is not—" The moment hung in the air, electric and new. It was not a conclusion. It was not a romance, not yet. It was something more complicated and far more valuable. It was a partnership. "Eat your noodles, High Custodian," she said, picking hers back up. "Yes, ma'am," he replied, and for the first time, he felt the corners of his own mouth smile. Your radiance. The grand ballroom, 3 weeks later, was unrecognizable. The fractured transparency overlooking the white dwarf Helios had been replaced, not with glass, but with a vast, intelligent Lumerian crystal that captured the star's light and refracted it, painting the room in the soft, hopeful colors of 1,000 alien dawns. The gala was being held again. Not the parade of knives, but a new convocation. Evan Locke stood near the human delegation, feeling like a ghost at a party he had been forced to attend. Dr. Kira Solon, who now stood at the head of a newly formed precursor studies department, had insisted. She had personally requisitioned his new uniform. It was still the simple, black uniform of a conquered commander, but the tailoring was impeccable, and the silver piping on the shoulders seemed to glitter with an undeserved authority. He felt the stares. He was the hero of the crown, the human anomaly. To Evan, he was just a guy with a permanent, low-grade headache and a new, terrifying job description he did not understand. The title, Prime Custodian, had, for the past 3 weeks, been treated as a technicality, an internal system designation. He was the only one who could interface with the ring, so he was now in charge of it. It meant, as far as he was concerned, that he had inherited the galaxy's most complicated and vocal piece of hardware. The ring was always humming in the back of his mind. It was quiet, respectful, but it was there. It suggested optimized power routes for the station. It complained about the gravimetric plating in his own quarters. It was, he had decided, a roommate. A roommate with a god complex. Tonight was not a celebration of a failed treaty. It was the announcement of the Helios Charter. Empress Astria Nyx stood at the podium. She was, once again, the vision of imperial grace, but the memory of her, bloody and defiant on the ruined stage, was burned into Evan's mind. Today, her voice, clear and strong, resonated through the hall. We do not sign a treaty between two powers. We acknowledge a covenant with our own past. She outlined the Helios Charter. The Halo Ring, she declared, was not a weapon to be seized or a fortress to be occupied. It was the shared, ancient heritage of all conquered species. It would be protected. It would be studied. And it would be governed, not by one, but by a joint council, and by its chosen guardian. For weeks, she continued, her luminous gaze sweeping the room, this council has debated the meaning of this new title, Prime Custodian. Many have treated it as a new security clearance, a technical role. Evan shifted, wishing he could find a maintenance duct to crawl into. They are mistaken, Astria said. The title is not a product of this Concord. It is a law that predates it. A hushed murmur swept the crowd. A Lumerian aide, the same one who had first read the log entry, stepped forward, his hands visibly trembling. He was not carrying a datapad. He was carrying a physical, metallic artifact, a thin, ancient data scroll. This, Astria said, is a fragment of the Covenant of the First Weavers, a text my family has guarded for uncounted generations, believing it to be mere legend. She unsealed it. A soft, holographic script, in the same ancient, elegant language Evan now understood, bloomed in the air above her. It reads, she said, her voice a resonant echo of the ancient words. When the web is threatened and the last ring awakens fully, its chosen custodian shall be revealed, and he shall stand equal to any crown, bound not by a throne, but by the web itself. The silence in the room was absolute. It was so complete that Evan could hear the faint, ambient hum of the station's life support. Astria turned, her gaze moving across the hundreds of delegates, past the admirals, past the ambassadors, her eyes locked onto his. Evan felt his blood turn to ice. He understood. He finally, truly, understood. This is not a technical role, Astria declared, her voice ringing with the force of history. It is a sacred charge, a charge that is independent of this Concord, a law that is above it, and the one chosen to bear it is not a Lumerian. He is not a Xylosian. He is a son of Earth. She raised her hand, gesturing directly to him. I present to you, High Custodian Evan Locke, of the First Design. If the first gala had ended in chaos, this one ended in revelation. The hall was frozen. The concept was galaxy-shattering, that this human, this young, volatile, brutish species was not a new member, not a junior partner, but the heir to the entire ancient system. The man standing awkwardly in the back of the room was not just a hero. He was in the domain of this ancient, terrible weapon, legally and historically superior to every single being in the room. The HFY twist, Evan thought, his mind numb. We are not newcomers. We are the landlords. Evan felt the weight of 1,000 gazes, 1,000 new political calculations, 1,000 expressions of shock and awe. He saw Admiral Petrov, the human hawk, looking as if he had been struck by lightning, a look of dawning, terrifying pride on his face. This was the plot twist. This was the moment that changed everything. Astria's voice cut through the silence again, and this time it was softer, more personal. For generations, my line has known this legend, she said, speaking to the assembly, but looking only at Evan. We knew the myth, that a descendant of the Weavers, a human, would awaken when the ring became unstable. We knew it, and we kept it secret. A new shockwave passed through the room. We kept it secret, she continued, because a title, a prophecy, it is a weapon. It can be used to forge a tool or to crown a tyrant. The covenant described a rank, but it did not describe the person. I chose to wait. I chose to allow this custodian to live his life, to be a soldier, to be a man. I needed to know what he would choose, if he was not forced by the weight of a crown. Her gaze was intense, a public confession. I needed to see if the man was worthy of the title, if he would choose mercy over power, if he would choose protection over domination. He was tested. He was framed. He was broken. And in the end, when he held the power of a god in his hand, he chose to be human. Evan finally understood. The whole thing. His entire life. The agony of Frontier 9. The simmering rage at the system. The cynicism. The long road to the station. It had all been a crucible. He was not a victim of the system. He was the answer to it. His quest for revenge, the dark, burning need to find answers for his lost unit, was not about Draith. It was not about killing a single Varathi. His revenge was this. His revenge was standing in the center of the galaxy's power, in a commander's uniform, and forcing them all to acknowledge the truth. His revenge was reclaiming the stolen history of his entire species. He was not a life grunt. He was a guardian of the oldest law. The formalities of the gala concluded. The music began to swell, a tentative, uncertain melody as the delegates and ambassadors began to stir, talking in low, urgent whispers, their world view permanently tilted on its axis. Evan remained frozen, rooted to the spot. He was the High Custodian, a rank equal to an Empress. He needed a drink. He needed a 5-year nap. Then, the crowd before him parted. Empress Astria Nyx, having stepped down from the podium, was walking toward him. She did not move like a ruler approaching a subject. She did not move like a politician approaching an asset. She moved like a woman. The imperial mask was gone. The light on her skin was the soft, silver pulse he remembered from his cabin. Her eyes were not the eyes of Concord. They were the eyes of Lady Nira, the woman who had criticized his station's frequency and wielded a fire extinguisher. She stopped, just a pace in front of him, ignoring the stunned silence of the entire room. She looked at his rigid, terrified posture, at the new, expensive uniform he was clearly uncomfortable in. A slow, brilliant smile touched her lips. She held out her hand. "So, High Custodian," she said, her voice a clear, private note in the vast, public space. "Will you be my date to this gala party?" The question hit him like a gravity shear. It was her question, echoed back at him. But it was not a joke. It was not a dismissal. It was an invitation. It was a political alliance, a symbol of the new order, the crown and the web, standing together. And it was, underneath it all, deeply, terrifyingly personal. Evan Locke, High Custodian of the First Design, looked at the outstretched hand of the Empress of the Celestial Concord. He looked at her, luminous, waiting eyes. He had no protocol for this. He had no tactical manual. He was, as always, just a volatile human. A slow, crooked grin. The first genuine, uncynical smile he had managed in 5 years, spread across his face. "Your Radiance," he said, his voice rough. "I have to be honest. I am severely underqualified for this." "So am I, High Custodian," she replied, her smile widening. "We are making this up as we go." And, he added, his grin turning self-deprecating, "I am still terrible at small talk." "Good," Astria said, her voice dropping to a whisper, meant only for him. I am counting on it. He took her hand. It was warm. He was not a dancer. He was a soldier. But as he led her onto the polished floor, and the orchestra, sensing the shift in the universe, began to play a slow, ancient Lumerian melody. He found his footing. They moved together, the human and the Lumerian, the custodian and the Empress. They were not just a soldier and his monarch. They were not a master and a subordinate. They were partners. And as they danced, watched by 1,000 stunned eyes, they were the living, breathing symbol of a new galaxy. A galaxy where humanity was not the angry, brutish newcomer, but the long-lost, long-awaited elder, finally home, ready to take responsibility, and ready, at last, to dance. Far from the light and the music, in the cold, silent void. The halo ring watched. It was not a machine. It was a mind. It felt like custodian. It felt the complex, chaotic, beautiful symphony of his choice responsibility over dominion, love over control. It felt his connection to the crown. The balance, it decided, was pleasing. Deep within its ancient, sleeping core, matrices of light that had been dark for 10,000 years began to glow. New pathways, new star lanes, new, forgotten roads of the first weavers, shivered and prepared to open. The playground was, once again, complete. And it was about to get much, much bigger.